over the course of the last month, we have had title changes. We have had a lot of releases. We've had a few passings. And it's time we get into it. What is up, everybody? I'm Todd. Welcome to episode 2 of Turnbuckle Tuesdays. It's good to be back. So, just so everybody's on the same page, we are updating our release cycle to where the podcast will happen every 2 weeks or at least twice a month. So the next episode, episode 3, is going to happen July 21st. Same time, same channel. And you'll be able to view the VOD and that Friday after over on the YouTube channel. However, also to help lighten the load and maybe shrink a little bit of the discussion in regards to modern wrestling, because the whole point of this is to discuss wrestling history as well as the wrestling history topics as decided by the Spinwheel. We are going to be doing 2 side shows or separate shows that are going to be YouTube exclusives. They won't be podcasts. They are just going to be update episodes that will release on Tuesdays based upon what is out there as far as information. The first is going to be titled Turnbuckle Tuesdays News and Rumor Roundup. That is going to be the off-week updates in regards to breaking news that has happened in the wrestling world. So that will help shrink some of the news and rumor segment down a little bit and allow us to actually talk about more of the history of professional wrestling. The other is going to be Turnbuckle Tuesdays After the Bell. When there is a major event or an event that I find of note or of interest going on in an off week, instead of waiting for the next podcast to discuss, we'll do an episode of After the Bell to discuss what happened in the matches that I think we need to talk about. So that could be everything from a Saturday or Sunday night main event to a pay-per-view to a dope episode of AAA. Those will both be released on Tuesdays when there's material for them. And if this last month is any indicator, I'm going to be busy when it comes to the news, at least. Dear God, I can't wait till we get into it. We had a lot going on over the course of the last month in modern history, so that's going to be a big segment. We'll get into the archives here real quick, but we do need to spin the wheel. Once I find where my wheel spins at, there it is. We added some new topics. We have added, let me see here, women in wrestling, Jim Crockett Promotions, old NWA, and wrestling families. Let's go ahead and spin the wheel so we know what our random topic for that segment is going to be. Hopefully it doesn't stop dead center in the middle of one this time. I think the spin wheel really likes the indies, so we're going to do some talking about the indies, and then that will come off the board, and I'm going to add a new topic after this broadcast. So that is going to be our topic. But before we get to our topic, we have segment number 1 from the archives. All right, everybody. So the archives this week is super interesting. Super interesting. On June 17th, 1985, Macho Man Randy Savage and Terry Funk both make their debuts at a WWF TV taping in Poughkeepsie, New York. Macho Man would wrestle for the Hartford, Connecticut promotion until 1994, working both as a heel and a face depending on the storyline and what the company needed. While with the WWF, Macho Man would become an Intercontinental Champion, a 2-time World Heavyweight Champion, King of the Ring winner, and inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. Savage would leave the WWF in 1994 to sign with WCW, joining with Hulk Hogan and other former WWF wrestlers in Atlanta. Terry Funk's initial run with the WWF would not last nearly as long as Macho Man's, leaving in May of 1986 due to issues with the WWF's grueling touring schedule. Funk would have stints in multiple other promotions, just like his time before at the WWF, including WCW, All Japan, Eastern Championship Wrestling, and New Japan Pro Wrestling. Funk would return to the WWF in 1997 for another short stint, working both as a wrestler and a backstage producer for matches. Funk is best known as the godfather of the death match and a hardcore wrestling icon, and opened a wrestling school with his brother, Dory Funk Jr. On June 18th, 2005, CM Punk gives the original pipe bomb promo at Ring of Honor Death Before Dishonor 3, leading into the original Summer of Punk storyline. The Second City Saint was able to win the ROH World Championship at this time and threatened to leave the company with the belt. This storyline would be repeated during Punk's original time in the WWE in 2011, with a nearly beat-for-beat reenactment of the original Summer for Punk, and including him leaving through the crowd with the heavyweight title at Money in the Bank. It is still one of the most talked about moments of modern WWE history. June 23rd, 1996. After defeating Jake the Snake Roberts in the 1996 King of the Ring finals, one of the most industry-shifting promos was cut by Stone Cold Steve Austin while being interviewed by Michael P. Hayes. Talk about your Psalms. Talk about your John 3:16. Austin 3:16 says, "I just whipped your ass." This promo helped set up the new era of the WWF programming, leading to Austin becoming one of the faces of the company during the Attitude Era and selling a plain black t-shirt that said Austin 3:16 out at every stop on tour. This promo, his strong in-ring work, and a much-needed change in product propelled Austin into a global star in the face of the company and helped ignite the change from WWE's new generation to the Attitude Era. June 7th, 2004. In a shocking upset in a WWE Championship match, John Bradshaw Layfield, JBL, defeated Eddie Guerrero in a Texas Bull Rope match at the Great American Bash pay-per-view. This was JBL's first WWE Championship since joining the company, culminated in a historic 280-day title reign. According to the way JBL tells it, the heat he got during that program with Eddie was insane. Insane. And of course, like, the rest of the Guerrero family mixed it up with JBL as well. I think Eddie's mom slapped him and then almost got power slammed. But the entire Guerrero family is a group of wrestlers, so they were helping get the match over, which is really cool. July 6th, 1998. Hulk Hogan drops the WCW World Heavyweight Championship title to Goldberg on a live episode of Monday Night Nitro. This was Goldberg's first title win and helped push his fabled undefeated streak into the stratosphere. This was one of the final massive rating wins for Nitro over WWF Raw, with WCW getting closer and closer to jumping the shark with each. This was considered by many the beginning of the turn and the downfall of WCW. Granted, they still had 2 years to go before they finally just bit it and were bought by Vince McMahon. But we were starting to see the end of the NWO storyline. This was during the split faction, when the Wolfpack was a thing. And then you had the Hollywood NWO. And everybody but 6 guys, including Goldberg and Diamond Dallas Page, were in the NWO. It was a mess. It was a mess. This would later lead to Kevin Nash taking the belt off of Goldberg, then the finger poke of Doom, and just such bad booking. July 7th, 1996, 2 years earlier. Kevin Nash and Scott Hall as the Outsiders face Team WCW of Lex Luger, Sting, and Macho Man Randy Savage in a 6-person tag match that appeared to start a war between Invaders and WCW Defenders. Taking place at Bash at the Beach in 1996, The match seemed to be a handicap match as the outsiders, Nash and Hall, mysterious third man, looked to be a no-show. Towards the end of the match, Hulk Hogan's music hits, and after marching his way to the ring, Hogan proceeds to turn heel on his WCW compatriots. Joining the outsiders after finishing off Randy Savage with a leg drop. After the match, Hogan drops a promo claiming the arrival of the New World Order and beginning a new era for WCW. Now, my chat has stated, don't forget about the B Team or the Wolfpack. Well, I mean, I referenced the Wolfpack. I did say the Wolfpack. You had the Wolfpack, which was Nash's part of the faction, which was kind of the face version of NWO, especially during that time in '98. And then you had the B Team, which was all of the upper mid and lower mid card guys. And then we had NWO 2000. Like, there's just... The fact that the NWO got so big and took over almost all of the roster was in itself a problem. And in all honesty, we've kind of seen it play out the same way with similar groups in modern wrestling. Aces and Eights and TNA did a very similar thing, but instead of the look and the 90s, you know, semi-Latin gang look, like West Coast gang look that NWO kind of had, you had Aces and Eights be based on a motorcycle gang. And that could have been a really good storyline, but then, just like the NWO before it, had everybody and their brother almost on Aces and Eights. I would make an argument that the Bullet Club kind of falls into the same thing over in New Japan. Now, it's really interesting because the NWO concept was stolen from Japan by Eric Bischoff. I believe it was New Japan. They had a similar faction, kind of similar idea going. And Bischoff, being Bischoff, was like, yeah, okay, let's just use that. This is fine. This is fine. But the other thing is when Bullet Club was formed by Prince, Devin, and Machine Gun, and Bad Luck Fale, and Anderson, or Gallows. Like, that was the original core. And it was a mixture of the NWO and the Clique and Degeneration X. It was a bunch of gaijin who were trying to protect themselves and push themselves in an all-Japan promotion. And then it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. I mean, it wasn't until, I think, last year that they officially announced that the Bullet Club was done. And I don't even know who was the last leader of the Bullet Club. I do know the Dogs of War, the dogs over in AEW, were members of the Bullet Club, like some of the last standing members of the Bullet Club before they moved on. I know Bad Luck Fale was one of the original OG members that stayed through the entire run of the organization until it became defunct and is now in its own faction as Good Luck Fale. The Bullet Club produced Finn Balor, Prince Devitt, AJ Styles, Tala, Tama, and Tongaloa. Adam Cole, Hangman Adam Page, Kenny Omega, Jay White, the Dogs, the Young Bucks. It was probably one of the most important stables in recent history, and its time span was significantly longer than almost any other faction I can remember, outside of maybe the Four Horsemen, and I believe had just as much importance as the Four Horsemen had throughout history. And the reason for that is because they turned members into stars, and they were able to turn members into stars in an industry in a country that very much really did not like having non-Japanese champions and non-Japanese winners and non-Japanese wrestlers. Like the guy Jin, Western wrestler, has always been a part of Japanese wrestling, but it's always been as the foil. It's always been as the conquering force or the invader. And the Bullet Club kind of just goes, oh yeah, Nation of Domination, absolutely. No, that's 100% correct. The Nation also would be one of the factions, yes, heavily influenced. And there's so much we could get into unpack that, especially with the original Nation. I mean, arguably, you could say that the Nation also helped birth the Authority down the line, and the APA with Ron Simmons. Maybe that's one thing that we'll take a look at. I'm going to add that maybe to the board after we do Indies, is a look at some of the most important wrestling factions in wrestling history. Because I believe like the most important is probably the Goldust Trio, which is more of a business faction as opposed to a working faction. But like the faction to begin all factions was like the Fabulous Freebirds, the Von Erichs, and then you had the Four Horsemen. Like that was the 80s. And then the 90s you had the Clique and Bone Street Posse and the Nation, which had members of Bone Street Posse in it. Like some factions were behind the scenes factions. The Clique, which birthed the Generation X, but not all Clique members were members of DX, and not all DX members were members of the Clique. Specifically, I would say Rick Rude. And I would say probably Brian Armstrong, a.k.a. Road, Dog Jesse James, and Billy Gunn, even though they're good friends with the rest of DX, I'm not so sure that they were Clique members, because to me the Clique is Sean Waltman, Shawn Michaels, Triple H, Scott Hall, and Kevin Nash. That is the Clique. And China. After. But China would be more DX, in my opinion, instead of the Clique. The Clique at one point in time was the most important behind the stage group and organization in professional wrestling, because they controlled both companies. No, I think people forget that. You had Hall and Nash, who had creative control over in WCW and could swing creative and booking in any way they wanted. And then you had Shawn and Triple H in WWF, now WWE, who had the ear of Vince and could swing creative however they wanted. That's nuts. Yeah, I think China would probably be part of DX for sure. I mean, obviously DX. I don't think I wouldn't consider her maybe member of the Clique. Associate because of her relationship with Triple H. But yeah, I think definitely we need to be doing some discussion in regards to the concepts of factions both on screen and behind the scenes, because the Boneyard Syndicate, or the Boneyard Crew, or Boneyard Posse, that's Taker's group that consisted of members of the Samoan Dynasty and the Godfather and Henry Godwin. Like these were guys who rode together everywhere. Like they felt that they needed their own group to help protect them. And you could make an argument that this is kind of what Hogan did with his buddies too. Jimmy Hart, Mean Gene, Hogan, Macho to an extent, Brutus Beefcake, the Nasty Boys. Like they were all part of the same. They're all part of kind of a group that worked together and watched each other's back in the industry. So there's something to be said about it. But I do believe it is times to talk about our topic. Our topic, which is indie wrestling. Now, I think we should probably talk about the difference between indie and territory. Um, but let's go. Wrong button again. There we go. All right. So we are going to be talking about indie wrestling, which is very interesting because the indies at least go back into the 90s, but also you can make an argument that there were still indies going back to the territory days with the NWA, right? But what do we consider the indies? Well, well, the indies would be anything that would be considered non-Fed or non-NWA. I would also be considered like back in the day. You could also make an argument that these would be they were called the outlaw territories. There were territories that didn't pay into the NWA system. There were territories that later on, when Vince started forcing territories out, were regionally or not even regionally based that still provided local wrestling for fans that wasn't based on the Fed. When I say the Fed, I mean the WWF. Now, current indies include Juggalo Championship Wrestling, Deadlock Pro, Game Changer Wrestling, House of Hardcore, House of Glory, Fourth Rope, Major League Wrestling. Like, those are all the major indies, right? A lot of people consider indie wrestling as kind of the foothold to get into the industry. The indies produce significant talent. Bryan Danielson came from the indies. Kevin Owens came from the indies. Seth Rollins came from the indies. Sami Zayn, CM Punk, Adam Cole, the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega. Like, who's who in professional wrestling that's not a homegrown talent that came through a developmental system for the WWE currently has gone through the indies or gotten their start in the indies, unless you're someone like Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes started not in development. He didn't start in OVW. I know he did work in OVW, but he didn't kind of start there. He kind of had the benefit of being the son of Dusty Rhodes and the brother of Dustin Rhodes, and was able to get on a main show. I mean, he was talented. I mean, Cody Rhodes was a state champion amateur wrestler, so like he had it. He still does. His time in the Indies came after he left the WWE the first time. After the failure of Stardust and Dashing Cody Rhodes and Undashing Cody Rhodes, after all those gimmicks, and he just got sick of it, he went to the Indies. He did time in ROH. He wrestled for mom and pop indies. He wrestled for PW Pro. He went to Japan and wrestled for New Japan and became a member of the Bullet Club. And then put on the best-selling indie show pay-per-view of all time, filling a 10,000-seat Coliseum with his friends for a show that was not related to the Fed. And that was the first All-In. It was an indie show. AEW came after because Tony Khan saw it and goes, oh, this is awesome. And put the money behind it using the fire, I guess would be the proper word, that Cody and the Jacksons and Kenny and Adam Page brought to wrestling to create what is now the number 2 wrestling promotion in the country. ROH, which was a super indie. By that I mean it had national pay-per-views. It had a national presence on TV. It produced stars that went to TNA and WWE on the regular. It also had its own host of legends. So it was a super indie. It was like the top tier. Like it was the next step before getting into TNA, which was at the time the number 2 show, or getting into WWE itself, or into their developmental at like Florida Pro or Florida Championship or Ohio Valley or Georgia Championship, when those were all developmental territories for the WWE before NXT became a thing. Well, before NXT went from a game show to a developmental property. God, I love the Black and Gold era, by the way, because that was kind of the true successor of ROH. But ROH, you know, and then ROH had a huge issue with one of its founders. We might have to talk about that sometime. And it started faltering, and let me click on. I'm gonna bring up ROH quick since we've got everything going. All right, because I kind of want to get to, because like I know COVID-19 really like almost sunk it. Okay, so in 2022, Tony Khan announced that he had bought Ring of Honor from Sinclair Broadcasting Group, which had purchased that in all from the original founders. Okay, and they had gotten into some serious debt, like $12 million of annual debt, which is just insane. But yeah, so the thing is, WWE is notorious for this, in my opinion, and I think that's why we see a better transfer of skill sets in companies like AEW and TNA. WWE likes to do things the WWE way. That has always been the case. So all of those territories that I listed, those places that were developmental, they taught people how to be a WWE superstar. Not necessarily a general pro wrestler, but a WWE superstar. OVW specifically, God, had a class that had John Cena, Brock Lesnar, Shelton Benjamin, Randy Orton, and Dave Batista in it. Like the class of classes to graduate from a developmental property that have all wrestled at the highest level since over the course of the last 20 years. Nuts. That's insane, right? So when they would bring in guys from the indies, they might not, they would have to work twice as hard to get even halfway where the homegrown talent would be. And when you look at it like that, the change happened once FCW, Florida Championship Wrestling, became the only developmental territory and became NXT. That's when you started seeing a change. You started seeing guys and gals from the indies come in, and they would learn the WWE style at the Performance Center, but they were ready to bang and go right away in the matches. So that's why guys like Dean Ambrose, who actually didn't even wrestle in NXT, went through FCW and then got placed in the Shield. And Seth Rollins, who used to be Tyler Black. I mean, Seth Rollins was the first NXT champion. I don't think we would have seen that happen in the time frame that it happened in the short amount of time that it happened in, had Dusty Rhodes not gotten involved in NXT. I really think that. NXT became its own version of a super indie. Its competition was ROH for a long time. NXT was taking talent from ROH and pushing it to an entirely new level. Guys like Tyler Black became Sami Zayn. Kevin Steen becomes Kevin Owens. El Generico becomes Sami Zayn, allegedly. And stars from across the world. Shinsuke Nakamura comes over from New Japan. NXT has become the stopping point to break into WWE, and I think that's a good thing. I really do. I do think there are talent that's going to languish there because they're not from the WWE way of doing things. It sucks. I like the indies. I want to catch more indie wrestling. We have a handful of indies here in Iowa. Impact Pro Wrestling is doing a show on Saturday in town, and I wish I could get off early enough to go do it, but I'm not going to be able to go see it. And then you have Absolute Pro Wrestling, which has a show on Saturday in Algona, but they will be wrestling in Waterloo in August, and I really, really want to go. Really want to go to that. I think the indies are important. The indies allow for people who want to be in the industry a stepping stone and a path to get into the industry. Now, they also need to be dedicated to it. Wrestling is not a part-timer thing. And I think part of that shows with, we have the Black and Bold Wrestling School in Davenport, which is co-owned by Seth Rollins, which is producing wrestlers who are wrestling at these large-scale events or are in NXT or have done AEW dates or are in ROH or are wrestling for MLW or GCW. And it's necessary to both pair that education, that schooling of movesets, how to take bumps, how to work on a promo, how to cut a promo, as well as having the real-world application of it in the indies. I think the talent that is coming from the indies, because they're able to work more dates right now, are significantly at a higher level than I would say talent coming directly from college going into NXT right now. It's been said multiple times by multiple people involved in NXT currently that one of the things that is missing for current stars in NXT is reps. They are not getting the reps they need to be successful. Those reps can come on the indie circuit. Those reps can come if they start doing dark matches again. But that's why wrestlers like Shotzi Blackheart looked leaps and bounds ahead of other women in her division. That's why Seth Rollins was able to skyrocket with a rocket on his back in NXT and then in the WWE. That's why Kevin Owens will always have a place probably in the WWE. Same thing with Sami Zayn. Even though they are not originally brought in and their first wrestling experiences were NXT, but instead, because they had years of practice before this, years and years of road wear and damage and understanding how a ring works and understanding the psychology of the ring, how to tell the story with their bodies, and how to work with their opponents. That's why they become what they are. And it's unfortunate that we are seeing a bit of a cutback in that with guys, especially guys who have come over from AEW into WWE. Lexis King, I think, should have been brought into the main card as quickly as possible. I like what they're doing with Sean Spears as a player coach. I think that fits really well with him because he does run a wrestling school, and he is very good at reaching the current generation at where they're at as far as teaching wrestling. So keeping him in NXT kind of makes sense. I do believe Jordan Lynn Grace probably could have went from main card and main eventing TNA to doing the same in NXT, but she has also stated that she wanted to learn the WWE way. Julia was the same way. She came over from Japan. Her background's Italian and Japanese. English was a little rough. Roxanne Perez was the same way. They wanted to, when she came up from AAA, they wanted to work on their English as well as get used to the variants of styles. So I do get where some of that's coming from, but it does seem like the current strategy is it doesn't matter where you've wrestled at unless we have a very specific need for you, Jacob Fatu. We are going to run you through NXT and build you up. That's fine. But I also think that the use of the indies throughout history allow for, one, more people to see wrestling, and as much wrestling out there as possible is a good thing. The more wrestling that's out there, the more companies there are, the more matches there are, the more ways fans can get access to watch professional wrestling, the better it is for the wrestlers, the better it is for the wrestling companies and the promoters, and the better it is for the fans. Competition does breed innovation, but it also puts a lot of money in the pockets of the right people. Oh, that was a fun tangent. What do you say we get to the dirt sheets, huh? All right. So, the indies are important, and I really want to start getting into more GCW, Game Changer Wrestling, especially if they're going to go back, because they've talked about bringing Bloodsport back, which would be really, really cool. That would be really, really cool. But over the course of the last month, we have lost a few wrestlers, and we're going to talk about them. The first wrestler we lost was Pete Doherty, the Duke of Dorchester. He passed away on June 17th, 2026. He was born in 1943, and he passed away at the age of 83. Doherty was a New England-based professional wrestler and wrestling commentator who primarily worked for the WWF and the WWF from 1973 until his retirement in 1997, with notable matches against stars ranging from the early days of the company, like Bruno Sammartino, to the golden era new generation, including stars like Bret Hart, Hulk Hogan, and others. Doherty was inducted to the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame in 2010. We lost Joe Doring on June 26, 2026. He was 44 years old, having been born in 1982. Doring was a former All Japan Pro Wrestling Triple Crown Heavyweight Champion and a TNA World Tag Team Champion. He made his debut in professional wrestling in 2004, wrestling in the American Indies until he joined the TNA roster in 2005, All Japan Pro Wrestling roster in 2007, splitting his time between the promotions for most of his career. In 2016, Doring was diagnosed with a brain tumor and was able to have it removed via surgery. Doring was able to return to the ring after his surgery, returning to TNA while also wrestling for other American promotions. In 2022, Doring underwent another surgery to remove a second tumor. Post-surgery, he developed ataxia, limiting his mobility and putting an end to his in-ring career, retiring in August of 2022. In November of 2025, Doring was diagnosed with a third brain tumor. Doring then entered hospice care in late of June 2026, passing away 3 days later. A lot of companies over the course of the last week, especially SLAMMIVERSARY, paid tribute to Joe Doring. All of the wrestlers for TNA wore a armband with his name and initials on it. He was very much loved in both All Japan and TNA. He reminds me a lot of like a mix of Jake the Snake and Big John Studd. He was very much an old school pro wrestler guy by the time he retired, and I remember watching him in TNA a long time ago, and he did good stuff. But he's definitely going to be missed. And now, news and rumors. Oh my, has it been a month? We literally had news dropping the day after the first podcast, folks. The day after we did episode 1, my feeds were full of professional wrestling news, and we got to talk about it. The first up is Total Nonstop Action. It's been a busy month for the promotion, Total Nonstop Action, especially since the first episode of the podcast on June 16th. Quite literally the day after the live broadcast of our first episode, TNA news was breaking. Co-head of creative, Tommy Dreamer, was released in what was reported as a mutual decision between Dreamer and TNA, as presented by the innovator of hardcore on Busted Open Radio in a very emotional interview. Shortly after that, former world champion and member of the backstage personnel, Sami Callihan, reported via his X account that he too was released. Sami was expected to take the open seat on the creative team left by Dreamer, partnering with Hunter Delirious Johnson in preparation for TNA's SLAMMIVERSARY, with a lot of speculation pointing. The rumor mill is turning as to who could be joining Delirious in creative department, with a lot of speculation pointing towards Brian Armstrong, better known as Road Dogg or Jesse James, from WWE. Road Dogg was released earlier this year from WWE creative team due to struggling ratings for SmackDown. It would later be confirmed around Slammiversary that Road Dogg would indeed join Delirious on the creative team, with Delirious being the head of creative for TNA. On June 18th, it was announced via his own social media that digital producer Luke Perrin has also left TNA. The overall tone of Perrin's post comes across as positive, so this was more than likely a mutually agreed upon release. Throughout the week, Sami Callihan, Sami Zayn will be talked about later. Sami Callihan made sure to keep his name in the news. 2 days after his release, Sam did an interview with Busted Open Radio and spent time discussing a lot of different TNA-related topics. Sami discussed his actions when being released and how he regretted his initial reaction. Sami also expressed frustration for not getting promoted to the creative team, having been pushing to be in that position while working backstage for TNA. Callihan also expressed concerns for Slammiversary, stating that the build-up to the pay-per-view had been soft or lackluster, and that TNA has not been pushing its own limits so that it could anchor the AMC TV deal that had just been finalized. It was released by TNA that they had signed the Amazing Red for a TNA veteran for Slammiversary, and possibly longer, as well as re-signings of some of their current talent. However, it appears that Leon Slater, the former X Division champion, will be done with TNA once his contract ends, with speculation that Slater is going to either AEW or WWE, but WWE is the heavy favorite right now. As reported by Anjo on his TikTok account, TNA is going to be adding a new title to their women's division. This could be a mid-card title. However, Anjo highlighted in his video, TNA recently has not been too worried about pushing the Knockouts division, with their women's tag team championships having not been defended since February of this year, and there's just been general struggles with pushing the Knockouts division currently. This mid-card title could help elevate an underutilized talent, and that's great, but it could also really push a separated wedge into an already thin talent pool. In regards to rumors with the current releases of in-ring and backstage talent, it's been speculated that Anthem is looking to sell TNA in the near future. After the release of Dreamer and Callihan, TNA did release a statement that the string of recent releases have assisted the company with streamlining operations and improving profitability, aka we're hemorrhaging money. These statements have led many online, both as members of the internet wrestling community, as well as notable YouTube channels such as Cultaholic Wrestling, Wrestling Observer / F4W Online, and WrestleMania to speculate on whether or not Anthem is going to make TNA look as profitable as possible to sell the company. On his own podcast, TNA star Matt Hardy stated that he does not believe that right at this moment the promotion will be for sale, but maybe down the road after a few years, specifically targeting a 4 to 5 year time frame. After there was some significant backlash to Hardy's comments online, specifically on the cesspool that is X, Hardy took to his X account and went a bit more in depth about his opinion on the matter. Hardy clarified that he believes that TNA is not for sale and is in a good place, pointing at the last 2 years of solid growth within the promotion since his signing with them, as well as his brother Jeff. This includes the new TV deal with AMC TV. Hardy stated that both he and his brother Jeff have been working closely with TNA president Carlos Silva to improve the company and the product from the ground up. There are more rumors in regards to TNA being for sale. In a June 20th post on X, Blake Avignon reported that according to his sources close to Anthem TNA, Anthem CEO Len Asper has set a floor price of $30 million, but has a preferred price of between $40 and $50 million if Anthem were to sell TNA. In a follow-up post, Avignon stated that multiple WWE sources have stated that the Fed is not currently interested in purchasing TNA from Anthem due to already having the infrastructure that TNA would potentially bring to TKO WWE, including TV reach, a built-in audience, and a talent developmental pipeline. Avignon also referenced an amount of toxic debt held by TNA, leading to the inflated potential price of the company. Some of that toxic debt potentially could be related to some contracts that they can't get out of right now. After his release from TNA, things appear to have gotten worse for Tommy Dreamer in the realm of social media. As the news of his release, as well as the release of others, was beginning to settle, a lot of issues began to be raised by wrestlers, referees, and backstage personnel from various wrestling promotions. Cultaholic Wrestling discussed the whole situation in a video released on June 22nd on their YouTube channel. The issues range from him telling a referee that the referee would not work in the industry again to Tommy Dreamer inappropriately touching a female wrestler in the ring during a match at TNA, to racist statements made to other professional wrestlers. Like with all major releases in any sport or form of entertainment, these types of stories do come out of the woodwork when the person at the center seems to be falling from grace. But we should keep in mind that believing victims should always come first, and that this would not be the first time someone with power in the professional wrestling industry has used that power to their advantage in some shape or form. We're going to link the video from Cultaholic in the description below when the VOD goes live on our YouTube channel. We had another huge release on July 1st for TNA. This was after the Slammiversary pay-per-view. Eric Young, a two-time TNA World Heavyweight Champion, was released from TNA early in the afternoon. Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful.com broke the news via his X account, not giving much details in regard to the situation. Later that night, Young took to X himself to clarify some things being said about his release. According to Young, he asked TNA for his release and it was granted, and that he was working on a binding contract since 2023, and now he can work wherever he wants. Having started his career in 1998, Young initially signed with TNA in 2004, wrestling until 2016 when he left for WWE and wrestling in NXT. Eric Young was one of the talents released in 2020 due to COVID cutbacks, and he returned for a time to TNA before signing again with WWE in 2023. Due to his personal issues with working for Vince McMahon upon McMahon's return to WWE around the same time, Young requested and was granted his immediate release, returning to TNA. It is unknown where Eric Young will fall now that he is no longer with TNA, but there are many viable options for him between WWE, AEW, indie promotions, and it's been rumored that he'll go back to NXT as a coach. Eric Young is a fantastic wrestler. He's going to land on his feet. And that's it for TNA, at least. Big news for AEW fans. The streaming service Tubi is officially airing AEW Dynamite back episodes from seasons 1 through 3 available for free on the streaming service. There's also a live streaming channel called Watch AEW that is available on Tubi, streaming episodes of both Dynamite and Collision. Tubi is showing itself to be a bit of a secret well for professional wrestling content, having notable series such as Dark Side of the Ring and The Wrestlers available to watch, as well as shows and specials for promotions such as Women's Extreme Wrestling and CZW. There's also just an amazing back catalog of documentaries on professional wrestling with footage going back to Gorgeous George and Luthez all the way up to the retribution of Jake the Snake. We're not sponsored by Tubi. We're not. I just think this is pretty damn cool that we can get as much wrestling content as we can get from a free streaming service. In other AEW content-related news, Fightful Select's Jeremy Lambert reports that there is still promotions to be announced to joining MyAEW.com. For those not in the know, MyAEW is an all-in-one site for content related to All Elite Wrestling, including access to Watch AEW, the same live streaming rerun channel available on Tubi, as well as access to past pay-per-views, and new up-and-coming pay-per-views. Current promotions that have content listed on the site include Ring of Honor, Warrior Wrestling, Creative Pro, Wrestle Pro, 1FW, Limitless Wrestling, Produce, Capital City Championship Combat, or C4. Well, it's also turned into kind of the pay-per-view home for CMLL, as well as partnerships with NJPW, specifically for Fantastica Mania Mexico 2026. One of the 4 AEW pillars has not signed a new contract and is wrestling without a working deal from the Tony Khan-led promotion. Jungle Jack Perry, leader of the Jurassic Express and associate of the Elite, has not signed a new contract since his last deal expired early in the year. It is unsure as to why a new contract hasn't been signed, but Perry has continued to wrestle for AEW and made appearances on AEW TV. However, he was not listed on the card for AEW Forbidden Door. There's some speculation that Perry could possibly sign with rival promotion WWE, more than likely starting out going through NXT, much like Ethan Page, Alexis King, the former Brian Pillman Jr., and Sean Spears. However, it should be noted that there are still sore feelings between Perry and WWE star CM Punk, and that could hinder any potential for WWE to sign Jack Perry. On an earnings call before the June 28th pay-per-view for Forbidden Door, Tony Khan was asked about the potential of AEW or Tony himself purchasing TNA. Tony asked about the cost, stating that he would potentially be interested in obtaining the company, especially TNA's backlog of media history. He stated that the $40 million price tag was way too high for him to even take the offer seriously. After the once again successful Forbidden Door, it seems like Tony Khan and AEW Sorry, I missed one. I missed the story. Multiple outlets are reporting that Dax Harwood and Cash Wheeler of AEW's FTR are stepping away from the ring for a while to take a much-needed break. The pair have been working for 12 years straight between their stints as the Revival in NXT and WWE main roster and AEW. Only stopping to finish non-compete clauses and due to some injury time off. The former tag team champions need this time away from the ring, and they have been the definitive team for AEW when it comes to their tag team division. And this was all confirmed by Dax Harwood's own post on his social media platforms. FTR remains under contract with AEW at the moment of current reporting, and I don't really see them going anywhere right now because they like what they do and who they work for. After the once again successful Forbidden Door pay-per-view, it seems like Tony Khan and AEW are set to return to England for All In at Wembley Stadium. As one of the biggest shows of the year, All In Wembley has historically done well in both attendance and pay-per-view buys for AEW, This year, it seems there's going to be some on-air competition, however. Sources like Fightful Select have confirmed that WWE will counter-program AEW's Sunday, August 30th event with both a AAA and an NXT event that same day, going back to back, hoping to pull some eyes away from the competing product. This isn't new. NXT has been used to counter-program AEW for years. And it's not new for WWE to do this just in general. This goes back to the Vince McMahon days in the 80s when you counter-program things like Starrcade by WCW. It's more wrestling for the fans to watch. It just forces the choices and the competing for the live views. And I think it sucks, personally. I do like that there's more wrestling to watch. That's great. I hate that wrestling fans who like both products, especially with AAA, are going to have to be forced to split between the two. Mark Briscoe is reportedly out for the time being due to injury reported by Fightful Select on July 2nd. The sensei of Redneck Kung Fu suffered an injury in his World Championship challenge against MJF on Dynamite. The announcement came from Briscoe's fellow conglomeration members Orange Cassidy, Roderick Strong, and Kyle O'Reilly on Collision during an interview segment. There's not been a timetable set as to when the Sussex County Chicken will return to the conglomeration for the ring. WWE news. So initially, the first week after last episode, it was pretty quiet. And I'm assuming it was just because they're preparing for, like, they had European tour, and then they jumped from European tour over to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, for their big Night of Champions event. But there were still things that happened. After receiving wild internet wrestling community speculation and hate since the June 22nd Monday Night Raw, WWE Women's Intercontinental Champion Sul Ruka has withdrawn from social media completely, stemming from backlash she received due to an accident with WWE Women's World Champion Liv Morgan. Online backlash has caused the new main roster member to drop off from her social media platforms, including X and Instagram. The internet wrestling community became angry after Sol attempted a crossbody splash on both Lyra Valkyria and Liv Morgan. Lyra was able to move out of the way, but Liv still took the move, potentially injuring Morgan in the process. Morgan was still able to finish the match, won the match, and did not appear to be injured. All competitors have indicated that the accident happened due to a miscommunication error within the ring. Morgan is reportedly not seriously injured. Fans at the Raw event also stated that Morgan did not seem injured and left the match without issue on her own power. The issue is this: certain types of wrestling fans seem to think that they can bully and harass talent just because of the safety of the internet that protects them. Never mind the feelings, lives, and livelihoods that can be impacted by harassment campaigns online. When any celebrity has to distance themselves from social media because they are being harassed, dangerous lines are being crossed. No matter what happened in the match, and especially if it was a simple miscommunication error, Sul Ruka does not deserve to be harassed in any fashion. Wrestling is a live performance art, and in such types of art, mistakes and accidents can happen. The win does give Liv Morgan some momentum going to the Night of Champions and her Queen of the Ring final matches against Io Sky. In a video posted by Cultaholic Wrestling on their YouTube page on June 26th, it appears that things have changed somewhat backstage in regards to creative and the control that has been held by Paul Triple H Levesque. The video mentioned the lack of control Triple H seems to have in regards to the story progression of last year's WrestleMania. According to multiple sources, including Cultaholic Wrestling, WrestleMania, and What Culture, Triple H has called out fans for overanalyzing the WWE's product and not having fun with wrestling any longer. So this put the internet wrestling community on higher alert, but is he wrong, though? Late in the day on June 26th, Sean Ross Sapp from Fightful Select reported that WWE will sign top-tier independent wrestler Zilla Fatu. Zilla has been making waves throughout the pro wrestling world with his work in multiple indie promotions like Major League Wrestling, Game Changer Wrestling, House of Glory, and Fourth Row. The son of legendary performer Umaga and cousin with Roman Reigns, Jacob Fatu, Solo Sikoa, and Jimmy and Jay Uso, Zilla's presence can really bring some much-needed interest to the current Bloodline storyline within WWE's programming. The question does linger, though. Will Zilla join the Bloodline, continue to make his own way as he's done the last few years in the Indies, join with the now Solo, or will he convince his former MLW tag team partner Jacob Fatu to leave the Bloodline and pair up? Or will Zilla join up with a former fourth rope running mate that has been rumored to be returning to WWE? With Zilla still currently holding the House of Glory Crown Jewel Championship and the Fourth Rope Heavyweight Championship, I doubt he will be seen at the Night of Champions PLE, which he wasn't. However, there is a Saturday Night's Main Event coming up soon that might make a very interesting and welcoming backdrop to the much-anticipated signing. Newer speculation is that Zilla will actually get his start in NXT as opposed to Raw or SmackDown, giving Fatu a chance to learn the WWE way of professional wrestling without having to be immediately thrown into a storyline. I do believe this is probably the best case scenario. I also personally believe Zilla does not need to be part of the Bloodline in order to be successful. He's 7 feet tall, and you can't teach that. Fightful Select is reporting that Big Cass, also known as William Morrissey in AEW, will not be renewing his contract with AEW when it expires this week and will be returning to the WWE roster this summer. With rumors earlier this year of WWE coming to a deal with Big Cass's former tag team partner Enzo Amore, it is quite possible we will see the duo return to the WWE as a tag team, hopefully giving that division a much-needed shot in the arm. Endo has been working in Fourth Rope alongside Zilla Fatu, which adds another interesting dynamic to this rumor. In the aftermath of Night of Champions, it seems to be some changes in the landscape of the main event. Obafemi has forload his championship match for SummerSlam for a Hell in the Cell match against Brock Lesnar. This would be the third meeting in the ring between the two behemoths, and a no-holds-barred cage match seems fitting. Jey Uso and Cody Rhodes both made bids to be the number one contender to challenge Sami Zayn for the undisputed WWE Championship, with SmackDown General Manager Nick Aldis on an administrative leave from his dust-up with Gunther after Night of Champions main event. Raw General Manager Adam Pearce stepped in to set a number one contenders match between Cody and Jey that night, with the winner having a title shot on the following week's Raw. The American Nightmare beat main event Jey, clinching his position as the number one contender. With Nick Aldis on administrative leave, there is speculation that he'll be making a long-awaited in-ring return at SummerSlam to face Gunther. Could this be the first and last WWE match for the former TNA and NWA heavyweight champion? Gunther's appetite for destruction carried over to the 6th of June to the July 6th Raw, with him powerbombing Cody Rhodes through a table, leaving Cody injured and not cleared to wrestle Sami Zayn in the night's main event. A returning Nick Aldis was able to make a call and bring in a new opponent for Sami. CM Punk, who has been off WWE television since the Raw after WrestleMania. In the match, Punk would pin Sami, winning the undisputed WWE Championship and possibly setting up a confrontation with Cody Rhodes for SummerSlam. I have feelings about this whole thing, but I don't talk fantasy booking. I really don't like talking fantasy booking on the show. We can talk about it in the Discord, though. It appears that WWE will be shy one Celtic Warrior in the very near future. Jeremy Lambert of Fightful Select reported on July 5th that Sheamus has elected to not renew his contract with the WWE. Sheamus has been with the WWE since November of 2006, 19 years. And in that time, he has held multiple championships, both as a singles competitor as well as a tag team member, won the Royal Rumble, the King of the Ring, and the Money in the Bank. The Celtic Warrior's hailed career has allowed him to tour all over the world. It is unclear what the next step will be in Sheamus' career or if he chooses to retire. There are many within the IWC who are speculating that Sheamus will join former Bar teammate Claudio Castagnoli in AEW, possibly putting the Bar together again, or joining the Swiss Superman in the Death Riders. Sheamus has been off TV since the end of 2025 due to suffering a shoulder injury. It's been reported that Sheamus, like the New Day, Xavier Woods and Kofi Kingston, who left in May of 2026, was asked to restructure his current deal, leading to the Celtic Warrior requesting his release. This has been an ongoing trend where they're trying to restructure some deals, these longer-term deals with these older wrestlers that TKO does not necessarily see as value. Unlike Vince, now the one thing that Vince did do is he took care of his older guys. He got them longer deals so they could be taken care of. TKO is a business that doesn't operate in that way. That's why we're seeing some of these. We're seeing more money being thrown at younger talent, and we're seeing requests of contract restructuring for deals that are in the middle of like a 5-year deal that is multiple $1 million deal. So I can't blame Woods or Kingston or Sheamus for leaving. I hope that they find success elsewhere. We have some NWA news, folks. The National Wrestling Alliance, that is right, they are alive. Tubi strikes again. Friend of the show, the Professor Rick Del Santo, or at the Rick Del Santo on TikTok, posted a clip from his podcast, The Pro Wrestling Wire, breaking the news that the National Wrestling Alliance has inked a distribution deal with Tubi as well as AEW ahead of their planned 78th anniversary special set for July 25th. NWA Power will be available every Thursday on demand on Tubi as well as airing live on Comment. There will be links below to Rick's podcast and his TikToks. Please go check him out. Rick has been super cool with talking wrestling history. When Joe Dorian passed, he immediately shot me a message letting me know because it is a moment of interest, because he knows that I cover those kinds of things. He is very, very deep into old school territory stuff. His podcast is really fun. I enjoy him. I enjoy his content. And he's really great at breaking the news. I would love to do a co-host with him sometime. And maybe I should set that up sometime. Then we have one final entry for news and rumors. Tonight is the final match for legendary Japanese wrestler Tiger Mask. He wrestled his last match in Mexico during the CMLL NJPW FANTASTICA MANIA Mexico on June 19th. The Tiger Mask character has been a staple in Japanese pro wrestling since the 1980s, with the original being based on and inspired by the title character of a manga. The current iteration of Tiger Mask is portrayed by Yoshiro Yamazaki. Yamazaki has performed under the Tiger Mask mantle since 1995, being known in chronology of the mask as Tiger Mask 4. Yamazaki received training from Satoru Sayama, the original Tiger Mask, as well as legendary Japanese wrestler the Great Sasuke, and then went to Japan to learn the lucha style of wrestling in Mexico, which is why he did a match in CMLL to say goodbye. There have been 3 other Tiger Masks that have been active since Yamazaki put on the mask, with 2 coming from legitimate fight backgrounds. With Tiger Mask 4's retirement, the current iteration will be Tiger Mask 7, with kickboxer Takeru Sagawa taking on the role. Sagawa will not transition to professional wrestling, however, but instead focus on the continuation of the Sayama Tiger Mask 1's social contributions, including social gatherings, fan meetups, and charity contributions. We might not see a Tiger Mask in professional wrestling anytime soon, but I don't think Tiger Mask will be away from professional wrestling forever. Tiger Mask is one of the old school guys from the foundations of New Japan and meant a lot to a lot of people. Tiger Mask was kind of like the Hulk Hogan or John Cena for New Japan. perennial good guy. Did a lot of meetings with sick kids. Like, it just overall a good guy and a great character. And it's sad that there's going to be a wrestling world out there without him. But I'm happy that he's been able to do kind of his farewell tour. And I really, really hope that his match today went well. All right. Oh, something. I pushed the wrong button. Oh, that's why. All right. Okay, so the bane of my existence has been the events that have happened over the course of the last few weeks. Okay? Note to the audience, this is a short look at major events in wrestling over the last month since the previous episode. I will look at major developments or top moments from each of the following events. There was a lot of counter programming this month with between the big three, with multiple events going on June 28th. For that very reason, as well as for it being NXT and just a special TV episode, I am not covering Great American Bash. There also was not much on there that I found of interest or of note to talk about. But first, taking place on June 19th, this marked the third year of the CMLL and NJPW co-promotion and mixing of lucha libre and Japanese strong-style wrestling. This event marked the official retirement match for legendary Tiger Mask of the official retirement match in Mexico for the legendary Tiger Mask of New Japan Pro Wrestling, marking his final match in Mexico as he tagged with Blue Panther and Mystico to take on Averno, Black Tiger, and Volander Jr. I thought it was really cool that he was able to be a part of Fantastica Mania and say goodbye to one of the core groups that he wrestled for. Thought that was really cool, in my opinion. AEW International Champion Konosuke Takeshita was in attendance as well for Fantastica Mania Mexico, wrestling alongside CMLL's Hechirero in a tag team against Los Guerreros Loguros, team of Ultimo Guerrero and Gran Guerrero. This appearance makes sense as CML and NJP, along with STARDOM, are set to co-promote Forbidden Door with AEW. Takeshita joins Team Mark Briscoe in a 12-person steel cage match against Team MJF and the Don Callis family, Takeshita's former stable. And this, from what I've seen of this match, I just love Takeshita. I love that he seems like he's just a badass and a hard man. I've loved his work in AEW, and I very much am looking forward to watching him be a face more often. On June 20th, we had Stardom, the Convergence. It took place at the Yoyogi National Gymnasium in Tokyo, Japan. There was an 11-match card that was presented featuring the promotion's top talent. The Joshi promotion has a lot of women wrestlers. Well, that's what Joshi is women's wrestling. The most notable event was the appearance made by Tekla, AEW's Women's World Champion, as she first berated Stardom's president, Toru Okada, for firing her. She then went on to physically attack Okada by whipping him with her championship belt. Now, if you've watched any AEW and are familiar with Tekla's work, you will find out that she is crazy. Tekla was eventually chased off by her Forbidden Door opponent, Starlight Kid. Starlight Kid is set to face Tekla at Forbidden Door and hopes to return to Stardom as the new AEW Women's World Champion. On June 7th at Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, we had WWE present Night of Champions. The card had 6 matches with the King and Queen of the Ring finals, a steel cage match, and 3 title defenses. In total, the event took about an hour and 20 minutes for the in-ring action. There are 3 matches that I want to highlight as major points or interesting storylines moving forward. The first is the King of the Ring finals match, which was Obafemi versus Jey Uso. Now, granted, spoilers, this was kind of spoiled for you back when we were talking about news because of the fallout, but the fallout is a big deal. A strong first match on paper for the Premium Live event. Throughout the past few weeks on Raw and SmackDown, the King of the Ring tournament has been taking place, starting with the Fatal 4-Way matches in the opening rounds, then single matches through the semifinals, and the crowned King of the Ring earning a main event spot for the two-night SummerSlam event in Minneapolis later this summer. Speculation by fans was either that Brock Lesnar was going to interfere and cost Obafemi his chance at the championship match at SummerSlam, or that a member of the Bloodline would show up to aid Jey on his own quest for the crown. Thankfully, neither happened. The match centered around the story of a dominant force in Obafemi versus the veteran main eventer Jey Uso, with some key near falls and some good mixes between two drastically different wrestling styles between Femi's power focus and heavy hitting, and Jay's more aerial and fast-paced movesets. The match set a good pace for the remainder of the event. In the end, after a fall from grace, swinging side slam, Obafemi defeated Jey Uso, becoming the 2026 King of the Ring, and on his way to main event SummerSlam 2026. Alright. I got those two mixed up. I really got those two mixed up. Okay, so here is the package that I put together for King of the Ring. Here is Queen of the Ring. I got them mixed up. All right. From one Royal Rumble tournament final to another, we have to talk about the Queen of the Ring final between Io Sky and Liv Morgan. Since the first WWE event in Saudi Arabia in 2014 with house shows, it has been a long road to get to where we are with women wrestling in Saudi Arabia. Since 2019, with Natalie Neidhart facing Lacey Evans in a ring for the first time in Saudi Arabia, more and more women's matches are showing up on cards for events within the country. Titles have been fought over, rumbles have been executed, and for Night of Champions, a crown was to be won. The story between Liv Morgan and Io Sky centers around the last few years, as Io, along with Rhea Ripley and other face female wrestlers, have been targeted by Liv and her stable, the Judgment Day. Since Rhea's leaving to SmackDown, Io became the focus of Liv's attacks. Io had even proclaimed that she is going after Liv's Women's World Championship, especially if she wins the Queen of the Ring. In the match, there was a good mix of Io's Joshi-influenced aerial style of combat and Liv's more gritty, hard-hitting heel style with the incorporation of a new submission, the half Boston Crab. Throughout the match, Liv worked over a knee of Io's that has been injured in a bump taken on the steel ring steps. Io persevered through the pain in her knee and eventually was able to take Liv out with a final over the moonsault for the win. Can't believe I switched those two. I feel dumb. The main event: defending champion Cody Rhodes versus Gunther versus Sammy in a 3-man match. The story gets convoluted very, very fast. Let's get into it. Since the clash in Italy, the story has been that Cody and Gunther are destined for yet another clash for the undisputed WWE Championship held by Cody. Sammy, always lagging behind in the upper mid-card, has played a huge part in recent weeks, interjecting himself into the storyline between the Ring General and the American Nightmare, culminating in his acting as a referee between the two on SmackDown, and his attacking of both Cody and Gunther to lead to a no contest for the match. SmackDown General Manager Nick Aldis set up a triple threat match between the three. Throughout the match, each combatant was able to get high spots with each of the other combatants. Multiple people in the ring can be chaotic, but these three were able to turn the tide of chaos into a ballet of brutality with high spots including multi-person crossroads, the destruction of both the Arabic and English language broadcast tables, and some sunset flips for near falls. But the unimaginable happened. Sami Zayn escaped Cody's attempt at a second crossroads, rolling Cody up using a sunset flip for the win, and won his first major championship within WWE, making him finally a Grand Slam champion. All right. As far as reception goes overall, critically speaking, Night of Champions was generally well received by wrestling writers. Many noted that the Obafemi win and the Sami Zayn win were nice touches for a bit of the unexpected. It was a good outing for WWE, and it was obvious that the creative arm of the company knows how to keep the Saudi fan base happy with its booking throughout the event. We've talked a little bit about the aftermath. We're going to deep dive a little bit into it right now. Immediately after her win, Io Sky announced that in the ring she was going to be facing Liv Morgan for the Women's World Championship. Io was attacked on the following Raw by Liv and some of her Judgment Day counterparts, targeting Io's injured knee. Io was not saved by anyone until the backstage personnel and producers ran out to stop Liv. In the Raw after the event, Obafemi addressed the crowd, seeming to make his decision for who would be facing for a title shot at SummerSlam. He was interrupted by Brock Lesnar with Paul Heyman. Lesnar chastised Oba for the things Oba had been saying about Brock while Brock was absent, then hit Brock with a low blow and an F5. As Brock and Heyman were leaving, Oba was able to call out and demand to face Brock at SummerSlam in a Hell in a Cell cage match. Immediately following the main event, Gunther stormed to the backstage area and confronted SmackDown General Manager Nick Aldis, claiming that Aldis set up Gunther for Gunther to lose because Aldis was jealous of Gunther's ability as a wrestler. A tussle then happened after Gunther poked Aldis in the chest. Are we looking at a potential match between the Ring General and Nick Aldis in SummerSlam? I think we're headed that way, but I'm not 100% certain. All right. Now on to Forbidden Door. AEW's Forbidden Door took place on June 28th at the SAP Center in San Jose, California. The fourth annual Forbidden Door show has come and gone. Within the halls of the SAP Center, members of the AEW, CMLL, NJPW, and STARDOM rosters battled in 12 matches. Some storylines were continued and pushed, some dream matches were had, and some new storylines developed. There's so many matches that are of interest. It was hard to pick only a handful to go over, but here we go. The Women's Owen Hart Cup Final. Mercedes Moné versus Maya World. Last year's winner, Mercedes Moné, sought to continue her legacy by winning back-to-back tournaments. Maya World, whose emotional roller coaster and entrance into the tournament weighed heavily on her heart, sought to prove that she was very deserving of her position in the finals. Maya's entrance in the tournament came as a replacement for Stardom star Sari, who was injured and could not compete. Just days before her first match in the tournament, Maya World lost her brother, and her story throughout each match dealt with her grief and her ability to shoulder the pain but persevering. Maya World, who had significantly less experience than the CEO Monet, showed a lot of heart throughout the match, but had some serious issues with wardrobe malfunctions with her ring gear. By the end, the experience of Monet showed through as she submitted Maya World, winning her second consecutive Owen Hart Cup. We also have the Death Door match, which is the 12-person cage match featuring Team Briscoe of Mark Briscoe, Orange Cassidy, Roderick Strong, Kyle O'Reilly, Konosuke Takeshita, and Darby Allin versus Team MJF featuring MJF, Kevin Knight, Kyle Fletcher, Jack Doyle, Okada, and Andrade El Idolo. Talk about chaos personified in a match. AEW went all out for this large-scale multi-man cage match, including designing and incorporating a new circular cage, giving more room for the wrestlers to work and cause devastation. The match itself was full of surprises, high spots, multiple weapons used, and a few explosions. Though Team Briscoe seemed haphazardly put together, with the conglomeration teaming up with Darby and Takeshita, each member had their own goals and targets in regards to MJF and his hired team from the Don Callis family. Throughout the match, there was organized chaos. Each participant got into multiple high spots. Even Leo Rush made an appearance, coming out of Roderick Strong's hockey bag when it was unzipped, adding to the chaotic feeling of the match. But the main story was Mark Briscoe desperately wanting to beat MJF and earn a match against MJF for the AEW World Championship. Towards the end of the match, MJF began ordering Andrade around, something that Andrade did not take kindly to, and after some arguing, Andrade attacked MJF, then hit Jake Doyle with a low blow. Andre then stripped down to a t-shirt down to a t-shirt underneath his typical dress shirt that stated, "Fuck Don and fuck MJF." Turning face as he directed Briscoe to cover Doyle for the pin and win. Briscoe was able to hit Doyle with the J Driller and pin Doyle for the win, setting himself up to face MJF for the title. I hope so. That's actually what I'm hoping for too. I really, really hope so. I loved Death's Door. I think that needs to stay and replace Blood and Guts. Tony, make it happen, please. The men's Owen Hart Cup final. Will Ospreay versus Swerve Strickland. Two of the best wrestlers in the world have reached the finals in the annual tournament. Ospreay is trying to prove to himself that he truly does belong at the top of the card as a wrestler after his neck injury in 2025. Swerve is dead set on tearing down anyone before him and reclaiming his place as the top guy of AEW. Between a mix of hard-hitting, brawling, and some higher flying moves from both combatants, this match showed why both are amazing professional wrestlers. Counters, no sells, and near falls set up a feeling of desperation for each wrestler. Soon, each wrestler was busted open, their crimson masks highlighting the desperation and anguish throughout the rest of the match. After a series of heavy signature moves by each and a low blow by Swerve to Ospreay, almost felt like Swerve was just too much for Ospreay to finish. As Swerve attempted to finish Ospreay for good, the Death Riders came to Ospreay's corner, shouting encouragement, trying to steal Ospreay's reserve. With Ospreay in his sights, Swerve wanted to finish it, but a moment of connection between Will Ospreay and Jon Moxley brought out a final push and a limitless beast buried deep within Ospreay, only aching to break free. Ospreay stood and began to fight back against Swerve, using the things he learned while working with the Death Riders in their dojo. After a final Tiger Driver slam, a move Ospreay had said he had retired, he was able to pin Swerve, winning the Owen Hart Cup and the opportunity to main event the All-In event at the end of the summer in Wembley. Overall, critics and fans were pleased with this huge show. Highlights for many were the Ospreay Swerve match, the Steel Cage match, and Tekla versus Starlight Kid. I just can't cover everything. Overall, each of the matches were received well, even the pre-show. Ospreay versus Swerve is on a lot of lists as a potential match of the year for 2026. That would put it up against El Grande Americano Mascara contra Mascara from AAA. In the aftermath, there are some intriguing storylines building in AEW after Forbidden Door. Mark Briscoe would face MJF on the July 1st Dynamite in a losing effort. After the match, MJF waited for a final attack on Briscoe, but Kenny Omega ran out for the save. Omega cut a promo demanding a match against MJF for the title on the show. MJF denied Omega the chance, but he did offer Omega a chance the next week on Dynamite, but with a catch. If Kenny loses to MJF, Kenny can never challenge for the AEW World Championship ever again. A stipulation that is very rooted within the lore of the title, going back to Cody Rhodes trying to beat Chris Jericho for the title and losing, and Hangman Adam Page facing MJF for the title and losing. Could this be the last time the best bout machine challenges for the AEW World Championship? Andrade was embraced on Dynamite by the crowd as a face, but was attacked by members of the Don Callis family. Go figure. Setting up a soon-to-come altercation with Andrade and some members of his former stable. He would later go on the next week to beat, I think it was on Collision, Nick Cage, who was a returning member of the Don Callis family. It was good to see Nick back in the ring. More anonymity. More animosity. Jesus Christ, Don. More animosity between Kevin Knight and Darby Allin. Darby challenged Kevin Knight for a match for the TNT Championship. Callis interrupted, saying he was never going to allow Darby to have a match against Knight for the title because Darby tried to blow up Kevin Knight. Well, I mean, Kevin opened up a bag full of explosives. Looking further ahead, Will Ospreay is set to main event AEW's next big pay-per-view in All In, Wembley in London, England. It is unknown as to who will face in the ring or what stipulation will be, but a lot of fan booking is leaning towards Will versus Kenny Omega after Omega takes the AEW World Championship from MJF. In all honesty, if it's Kenny versus Will, that's a great match. If it's MJF versus Will, that's a great match. Either way, it's going to be a fantastic match. Cannot wait to read about it. And our final event, Slammiversary. TNA's annual Slammiversary took place as well on June 28th at the Agnes Arena in Boston, Massachusetts. I'm not from Boston. I don't know how to say that. With so much going on with TNA outside of the ring over the course of the last couple of weeks, it feels like the build-up for the annual Slammiversary event was a bit in the shadows. But overall, it seems TNA was to do what TNA has always done since its inception in 2002. Rise from the ashes as the world burns. Counting the pre-show matches, Slammiversary put forth a solid effort with 10 matches. Titles were defended, wrestling happened, and the future still seemed uncertain. There were 2 announcements for inductions in the TNA Hall of Fame, with Amazing Red and Conan going in this year at Bound for Glory. First match we're going to talk about is the 4-way ladder match, defending TNA Tag Team Champions, The System, members Brian Myers and Bear Bronson, versus the Broken Hardys, Broken Matt and Brother Nero, aka Jeff, The Righteous, Vincent and Dutch, and the Great Hands, Jason Hotch and John Schuyler. In a match type that is synonymous with the names Matt and Jeff Hardy, the 4-way ladder match was for the TNA Tag Team Championships. Throughout the match, each team was able to highlight their own specific brand of chaos. The Righteous brought in a ladder covered in barbed wire and flowers. Jeff and Matt took high risks to punish their opponents, and the System members continued to battle back against insurmountable odds. The match was full of ladder bumps and high spots. A lot of damage done to all participants in a short period of time. But after Jeff Hardy, or Nero, took out the Great Hands with a Swanton Bomb off the top of the ladder, the Broken Hardys climbed to the top of the ladder and unhooked the suspended belts, becoming the new TNA World Tag Team Champions. In the main event, we saw defending TNA World Champion Mike Santana versus Nick Nemeth. Actually, probably two of my favorite wrestlers. Overall, all right, Mike Santana was set to defend his TNA World Championship against Nick Nemeth, a former champion in his own right. Nemeth had kept his promise, cashing in his call your shot opportunity he had 1 month before Slammiversary. Thanks to some interference by Nemeth's brother Ryan, distracting the referee, Nemeth was able to attack Santana with the call your shot trophy, busting Santana open. Nemeth obviously wanted to end this match quickly, attempting to use submissions and super kicks to end Santana. But Mike Santana could not be stopped so easily. Santana continued to fight, all while bleeding from his head. By the end of the match, Santana succumbed to his wounds, and a Nemeth danger zone, with Nemeth getting the pinfall win, walking away now a 2-time TNA World Champion. Overall, Slammiversary delivered a high-octane pay-per-view setup against a very big card presented by AEW. The ladder match and the main event were highlights for many critics. Amongst the doubt of future for the TNA product, they were able to put forth a very entertaining show. Aftermath. It is still yet to be known what the future for TNA holds. Road Dogg has officially joined the creative team before Slammiversary, filling the spot left by Tommy Dreamer. Wuhan Nation, better known as Apollo Crews when he was in WWE, officially debuted during the event, and the Amazing Red returned. It's still unknown as to whether or not Mike Santana will stay with TNA now that he has dropped the belt to Nemeth. Speculation is that he will go to WWE once his contract runs out in the very near future, more than likely to debut in NXT. Santana does have a history with AEW, but had left for his current deal with TNA. During the pre-show, it was announced that the new Knockouts belt title had been created. The TNA Knockouts Television Championship was announced by TNA Hall of Famer Tracy Brooks, alongside the announcement of a 16-woman tournament to crown the inaugural champion. Leon Slater lost his TNA X Division Championship to Cedric Alexander in May, and was unable to regain the title in the Ultimate X match at SLAMMIVERSARY, with Alexander retaining, keeping at least one piece of gold within the system. Slater is one of the most sought-after talents on the TNA roster, and potentially in all of professional wrestling. Thanks to the working agreement between TNA and WWE, Slater has spent time working some WWE shows and with WWE talent, so a base knowledge of his abilities is already there for the WWE fanbase. It will not surprise me to see him in NXT in the very near future, as rumors state that his contract is set to be running out very, very soon. And one last bit of business with our upcoming events. Not nearly as much, especially with us taking a little bit of a time off. Notably, on the 11th, New Japan is going to be in Chicago for night one of their G1 Climax tournament. That could be very interesting. It's notable just because it's more local. But what's very important is the IPW Hall of Fame show, which is a special live event taking place in Waterloo. It is at the Lou Thez George Thoros Hall of Fame for Professional Wrestling. One of the inductees we've talked about in depth, Ryan Nemeth, is getting inducted this year. So that was one of the reasons why I wanted to go. But they will be having a special wrestling show that night starting at 7 p.m. GCW is doing GCW things, having events all over the place. AAA has Verena de Escandalo on the 25th. And I'm looking forward to that. I love their bigger events for AAA. AAA is really becoming my favorite WWE product. WWE themselves have Saturday Night Main Event, which is a special general show. That's their PLE for July, and that's going to be at Madison Square Garden. And I have heard that Danhausen is going to be playing a very special part for that. NWA has their 75th anniversary show. That's a premium online event taking place in the ECW Arena in Philadelphia. AEW on the 26th as the Redemption pay-per-view taking place in Montreal, Quebec. That will be the bridging pay-per-view before going to Wembley on the 30th of August for All In. And then Progress Wrestling, and I just have this listed as interesting. They also have an event on the 26th called Scorchio. And the reason I find this interesting is Nikki Cross and Killian Dane now own Progress, and this is their first huge event that they're putting on. And I'm very interested to see how it goes over, and I want to see how they do, and I really, really hope they are successful. That's it. I want them to be successful. Because more wrestling is better for everyone. But everybody, that is it. Thank you for tuning in. That has been your month of professional wrestling news, rumors, events, a little bit of history, and the archives. There's going to be a little bit of a format change. We are still perfecting things as we move forward. But I'm liking the way things are turning out. I'm liking how things are doing as far as where I'm going. Like I said, the YouTube channel on the off weeks is going to have the news and rumor roundup popping up on Tuesdays. And if there are events that I have something for, we will do reviews of them. And that could be everything from, hey, so there was this indie show that I really got into. Or it could be me filming at an indie show and talking about that. So, like, after the bell is going to be a lot of different weird possible things going on. But thank you, everybody. Episode 2 is now officially in the can. This episode will go live on YouTube on Friday. Thank you all for being here, and thank you to the wonderful Mod Squad for always being there. Especially thank you to B for being my script editor, or not my script editor, my script doctor and proofreader. In regards to the YouTube channel, we are currently working on some other wrestling history related topics. The Weird World of Wrestling is going to be a series with its debut episode, hopefully in the near future. I'm putting together some stuff for that. I'm still working on the Families of Professional Wrestling for Heavy Rests the Crown. But, you know, I only have so many hours in the day. So thank you, everybody. And I'll see everybody in 2 weeks, July 21st for episode 3. Or check us out over on the YouTube page, and you'll see me in a week for the news and rumor roundup. Thanks, everybody.